All right, we're going to go ahead and get started here. For our guests, if you can keep your cameras on and put yourself on mute, that'd be wonderful. We definitely want this to be an interactive experience. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm Van, host of today's People Media Video Podcast. We're going to ask you to keep your cameras on if you can and your microphones off as we have this conversation with our panelists for the next 20 minutes. And at that point, we're going to open it up for a roundtable to answer your questions. So go ahead and put all your questions into chat so we can call on you when we get to that part of today's show. And we're going to wrap up in 30 minutes. So we can go ahead and just dive right in. And our topic today is AI in nonprofits, and particularly how it relates to donor relations. So, first off, my co-host today is Eric Knight, CEO of Aspira Philanthropy. Eric, can you give us three highlights about your background, then tell us how Aspira is serving the nonprofit community?
Sure, sure. Hi, Vaughn. Thanks for being here. This is a really great opportunity, and thanks to John for putting this all together. Yeah, so I chose to switch careers about 11 years ago into nonprofit after having been in the entertainment industry, and I've typically been brought in for stabilizing and growing revenue streams. The ACS, American Cancer Society, was my first job. It was wonderful. Stabilized a portfolio of underperforming events. I was a development director at the Museum of Ventura County, an extraordinary opportunity under the great leader, Elena Brokaw. And I've been the executive director of the Humane Society, which is sort of the real highlight of my nonprofit career. We had a really wonderful new era initiative. We really set the stage for that place to grow and thrive and flourish for the future. And now I have my own company. I've had for about a year and a half, Aspira Philanthropy. Right now, we're providing advanced fundraising assessments for individual giving for nonprofits. So essentially, what I do is I work with nonprofits' data and take away the burden of complexity for them so that they know exactly which donors they should be talking to and what they should be talking to their donors about and why. Because I believe that nonprofit professionals, particularly fundraisers, are really great at the most important thing, which is relationships, and they shouldn't be crunching a lot of data, and they should have systems that serve them and don't suck up their time. So that's what I'm focused on right now with Aspira.
Great. Well, thank you, Eric. And clearly, tons of experience in nonprofits. So you are the perfect person to be co-hosting this with us today. So thank you. So now we're going to meet our featured guest, Chris Ticknor, Chief Transformation Officer at United Way of Orange County. Chris, welcome to the show. Can you walk us through your role as Chief Transformation Officer and the United Way Orange County's mission?
Absolutely. And nice to meet you, Vaughn. And thank you,
Of course.
John, for putting this together. Really appreciate the opportunity to share and participate in the conversation. Yeah, Chris Tickner, I'm Chief Transformation Officer with Orange County United Way and 211OC. Orange United Way is a 100-year-old institutional nonprofit. We're all independent 501c3s, but we're in almost every major metropolitan area around the United States. My United Way focuses mostly on Orange County, the community that's within Orange County, but also does some services outside of Orange County up and down the state of California. My role is really to take the mission and turn it into operating infrastructure. For United Way, our mission is to lift the community by addressing the most challenging human needs through collaboration, advocacy, and strategic programming. In practice, that means really building systems and partnerships and the digital tools that make the mission more real for more people more consistently. United Ways have a unique role in our respective communities. We really bridge the gaps between local government, nonprofits or community-based organizations, major philanthropists, and healthcare to really bring and address some of the biggest societal challenges that are affecting our communities. A big part of our work sits in 211OC and Get Help OC. So 211OC is really the 24/7 front door for social services. And then Get Help OC is a closed loop coordination platform behind it. It's a piece of technology that I operate on with my team.
Yeah, I'll have to get a
Together,
space next time too, John.
sorry, I'm getting some
Okay, and
background
we're
noise.
ready. So I'm going to let every.
Again, make sure everyone's on mute.
So together, both those 210C and Get Help Us See that the technology connect and take people in need and connect them with housing, food, healthcare, behavioral needs, transportation, and other supports. But most importantly, it helps us understand after the referral has happened, as we pass that person to a social service provider that can help that individual, really getting an understanding of what worked best to help that person in need. At this point, 2110C supports about 200,000 residents annually, which is a pretty significant number, facilitates about 500,000 inquiries a year, which is a lot of people in need. And this organization has really used AI and the influence of AI to bring better services to those that are calling in, doing everything from drawing down wait times from 11 minutes down to 2 minutes. And so, really, as a transformation executive, it's my role is really bridging together the business needs with the technology requirements to prove out better outcomes for the individuals that we serve.
Wow, that's fantastic. Those are really impressive numbers. Really impressive numbers. So 500,000 inquiries and 200,000 served through 211. Is that what you were referring to?
That's right. We're about a population of about 3.5 million individuals. So if you kind of put that math together, it's a significant amount of people that are in need within Orange County, which is commonly thought of as being kind of a more affluent community. But really, there are a lot of needs that happen within the northern part of our county, everything from food insecurity to homelessness to behavioral health needs that we all address.
That's wonderful. And how many, I suppose, sort of budget wise, what percentage of, what does that pie look like? How much is coming from grants, individual giving, or events? I mean, what do your revenue streams look like?
Yeah, it's a great question, Eric. It depends on the year and the programs that are available and administrations that are in the state government and county governments and all sorts of different kind of nuances that can change time over time. So, one of the anchor tenets of United Way is we have to be very adaptable to change because funding can switch on us on a dime. So we not only look at individual donors as being part of our revenue streams, we look at grants, we look at major philanthropists, we search for different government funds and programs that we might be able to facilitate to help us execute some of these programs. During the pandemic, a lot of emergency rental assistance funds came out from the federal government, so really injected us with a lot of funding to help a lot of people that were in need within our community. So we're pushing millions of dollars that we're passing through our organization. And then there are years that we run into where there are administrative changes or, focuses go elsewhere. And we really look at trying to leverage some of our philanthropic relationships to help, subsidize some of the care and the programs that we provide. So the deltas between good years and bad years can be a lot, and so we like to adapt to those needs as they come.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of the nonprofit way, adaptability, flexibility being sort of top of the things to be mindful of. When it comes to philanthropy tech, particularly AI, sort of what we're talking about here, you mentioned something that was really impressive about AI in the program side, right? Reducing that wait time. Uh, when it comes to fundraising, philanthropy, donor relations, all these things, AI is finding us in some ways, and in some ways, organizations are working to find AI and how it's going to show up. How is AI and philanthropy tech showing up in what you're doing? And are you finding something that's working really well? And have you found stuff that just, you're tossing out?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, there's kind of different AI uses within different cases within nonprofits, right? It's everything from fundraising to producing better operational excellence for better outcomes to connecting, individuals to, care. On the fundraising side, the challenge there is that is we really have to find data. The AI really only works best with the data that serves it. And so now, as we're starting to work with large language models and work with different social media sites and different channels that are now being able to expose some of that data, AI's at our fingertips, but we're really starting to just kind of cut our teeth on that moment. Here at Orange County United Way, we're looking at things like what are called model context protocols, or MCPs, to really connect into AI agents now that we're moving from generative AI into kind of an agentic world where AI agents are actually going to be reaching out to you to really validate and source you to whoever their user is. It's asking, who is a nonprofit that handles this kind of need for this kind of individual? We really have to wrap our head around, how do we evolve our organization to be the recipients of those kind of inquiries? And so we're looking into MCPs as being one of those options for traditional channels. But it also opens us up to, how do we get innovative to create our own channels and create our own data so that we can recognize patterns of giving, engagement, and awareness. And that comes in the form of everything from building your own mobile app to different ways of engagement to really understand how your individuals are really participating with your organization. Again, it's all about trying to build up that data foundation so that you can put that AI layer on top of it to really understand what those patterns and trends are doing.
Yeah,
great.
yeah, awesome.
So,
thank you.
Yeah, and Eric and Chris, I mean, I've had the pleasure doing the work I do of speaking for a lot of nonprofit organizations and being a part of these conferences. And what I hear very often is, and I think we can all agree, that donor relations are a vital part of nonprofit work. And we also can agree that AI is a hot topic in every industry right now. So just wondering, how have you utilized AI in finding those lapsed donors, re-engaging supporters, and building new relationships? You hit on it a little bit, Chris. And I'd really like to dig into, what are some of the pros and cons, and what are some of the best practices? And I'll open it up to Eric first, and we'll hear from Chris.
Yeah, that's exactly, the first part of what you're saying is exactly what Aspira does. So it essentially boils down to behavior analysis. So the AI that I use builds software and quality control software that works in a secure environment outside of AI to crunch a bunch of data and interpret it and spit out a bunch of things that I personally then look at and write narratives about and deliver back to. And then my software also delivers the actual donors in any given segment that my clients should be turning their attention to, because attention is the key. Attention to donors is the key. The relationships is the key. So what my software does is way upstream. It identifies behavioral patterns so that they can spend time with those relationships. And it's really just adding clarity for where they should be spending time. It's not turning donors into numbers. It's not depersonalizing anything. It's doing exactly the opposite. And I find that when there are some AI applications that are out there in philanthropy tech, particularly ones that are created outside of the world of philanthropy, there's a lot of real stuff that's not really that efficient, right? Stuff that isn't upstream, stuff that's saying, we're going to make your donor relationships stronger because we're going to automate their favorite things or something like that. I think that's a real low ROI. I think our attention is better, served when we're paying attention to things upstream, things that AI can really, really handle and take away complexity and the burdens. And the other thing about AI is, I'm finding in conversations, not just in nonprofit, private sector as well, is that people are being so quick, and departments and organizations are so quick to figure out how they're going to adopt AI, that they're not taking the time to step back and define the specific problem that they want solved by AI. So in a lot of cases, AI can be increasing complexity and adding to a workload and adding to the burden. I think that's the thing that I work with my clients on the most, that's the most beneficial, is how can AI create bandwidth and remove some complexity.
Got it. So Eric, I'm also curious, as a follow-up question, how do you manage your clients' expectations when it comes to AI? Because I know, a lot of us think like AI can just do everything for us, including managing these donor relations. So how do you manage that expectation?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I spend time with that before they really become my clients, because there is a lot of stuff out there saying, there are promises. You use this thing, you're going to see X amount of revenue increase, and I don't promise that. I illustrate small percentage moves. I say, look, if your high value lapsed donor retention improves by 5%, you're going to increase your revenue by $235,000 this year if you just reactivate that 5%. So I just put projections in front of them, low move projections.
Mhm.
And I always am really upfront. One of the first things I talk about is that the fact that what I do is in service of their relationships and not to replace their relationships.
Wonderful. And Chris, let's move on to you. The question again is, how do you utilize AI in finding lapsed donors, re-engaging supporters, and building new relationships? Pros,
Yeah,
cons, best practices.
I agree with Eric. I think there's definitely some room for maturity in the fundraising piece of AI. I mean, I think we're all kind of cutting our teeth in how we best utilize AI. I actually went to a conference just recently, and there was a chart that was thrown up on the screen at the conference, and there's kind of three images that were shown, and it was, showing disruption over history. And the first picture was really like the industrial age, and it was a picture of a factory floor. And it really talked about that, only when individuals really understood how to build factories and really kind of understand where machinery fit on that factory floor, did the Industrial Revolution really prove out, productivity. And same thing for the central picture was of bunch of cubicles with everybody with PCs on their desk, and it
Mm.
was talked about the 70s, 80s, and 90s when PCs were put into the workspace, and only when people really started to understand how that workflow adapted PCs into their environment did they really start to see productivity. I think it's the same thing with AI. We're right at the beginnings of this and trying to figure out how do we apply AI technology as part of our traditional workflows to make better outcomes on this. For Orange County United Way, a big piece of what we do is it's not our AI use is really about mission critical infrastructure. It's not AI as theater. So we really have to understand how we apply AI for better outcomes to the individuals that we serve. And that will be kind of the draw to have people participate and really get engaged and start, donating to our organization as they see an organization that is efficient, doing things outside of the status quo to really produce outcomes that are tangible and all the data that supports that intangibleness of social services that happened in prior years. Now we're at the leading edge of really understanding exactly what proves out results. And it's an exciting time in the nonprofit space, especially United Way and social services, to really get our heads wrapped around these things.
Right. Well, it sounds like both you and Eric are aligned in the fact that you're not using AI just to use AI, right? Like, what is the service? What is the outcome you're looking for? And then see how you can back up AI into that versus it's out there, we might as well use it, which I think is very thoughtful and intentional way to use it. I think that is clearly the correct way. I should say particularly in nonprofit, particularly in any organization, but I think it particularly in nonprofit when the outcome is for your customers, your clientele, it becomes really important that people see that it's coming from a place of intentionality. Well, thank you so much for the really great discussion. We are at the point where we want to take some audience questions or comments. I don't see any in chat right now, but I see some familiar faces who I know often have lots to say. So come off of mute and ask your questions or make your comments. I'm particularly looking at Kevin, Molly, Keegan.
Well, since you called me out, I'll
Of
ask a
course.
question. It's always good seeing you, Yvonne.
For you too, Kevin.
Yeah, Chris and Eric, really curious about how you sustain sort of this organizational behavior in terms of contributing to AI usage. Because we're seeing at the university where I teach at, companies just sort of throw it and say, okay, go use it without any sort of strategic direction. without any sort of behaviors or mechanisms to spur that engagement among employees. So I'm curious to know how your respective organizations are sort of encouraging that behavior of usage.
Yeah, it's a great question, Kevin. I don't have any real good silver bullets on that one, unfortunately. It's change management. As we do transformation disruption, this is creative disruption, right? It's and a lot of industries have gone through this. And the industries that have really come out on the winning side of this creative disruption are the ones that, best understand how they get engaged and the utility of their solution and really show and demonstrate the utility of that solution. There's a book that came out in the technology space, Silicon Valley years and years ago called Crossing the Chasm. Basically, kind of highlights, four kind of cohorts of users. It's, the pioneers, the innovators, the first adopters, the late adopters, and the laggards. And so what we try to do at our organization is really focus in on those first two, the pioneers, the innovators, and the first adopters, as proofs of concept. They get engaged, they start using this tool that we have for them, show how that and how that demonstrates better productivity, better engagement, and then that will pull in those late adopters. The laggards, unfortunately, will probably never adopt the solution, may be forced into it, but at least you're capturing a good share of the organization's participation in that first cohort, first couple cohorts. The other thing that I've heard too that a couple organizations have exercised on their AI adoption plans is really get an understanding or put some limitations on those that are using the tool. Use it or lose it. That's kind of the mantra that they have is, hey, we're going to give you these AI tools. You better figure out a creative way to use it and make it part of your workflow, or that's going to disappear and we're going to give it to someone else that's going to better utilize it. That has inspired a lot of their internals to adopt.
Yeah, for what a great question, and Chris, thanks for that because I was curious what your answer was going to be because I lead my own organization, which is relatively small, and when I'm working with clients, I do make a point to start to get into the conversation with them. For me, it's from the standpoint of I want your organization to stay healthy and stay safe, and here are things you really should not be doing with your data in AI. So I asked them some questions like, have you played with AI in your data? And there are nonprofits, none here, none that are in my circle, but through other consultants, I've heard of nonprofits that upload their donor data right into ChatGPT with names and everything. And so, there's a minimum of security. I feel a responsibility to at least make sure at a minimum that organizations are aware of the fact that they need to keep their donor data secure and any other data secure. And then on top of that, I like to get into really best practices of making sure that there are guardrails, making sure you know who is using AI, who intends to use AI, and how they are using it just in regular check-ins with one-on-ones. And anybody who's going to be using AI for messaging, make sure they all have the exact same voice prompt, right? You can create a voice for your organization. Your marketing department should do that with your CEO. Everybody who's going to use anything for messaging, make sure they use that voice prompt. Just putting some simple guardrails on there. But it's a great question because we're right at the beginning of this. It's the Wild West of it all. There's organizations that are they have no guardrails and no policies or anything, and everybody's just going crazy on it.
Yeah, Eric, you took the words right out of my mouth. I was thinking the Wild West. It really is. And you have to realize these
I like
AI
that visual.
companies are for-profit companies, and they're really trying to create some revenue in their organizations. And so their guardrails are kind of free and clear. But as a nonprofit, you have a duty of care. You have a duty of care to the individuals that are part of your organization, to the duty of care of those that donate to you, duty of care to those that are getting served by you. And so you really have to examine what does this tool do? What is it capable of doing? And create those backstops and guardrails to ensure that you're doing everything properly.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kevin, for the question. And Keegan, you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, thank you both. Thank you all for hosting and having this conversation. It's really close to our hearts. We've seen such important traction around the guardrails that you talk about, in addition to the technical and the risk-based guardrails, having a conversation about what's the professional identity guardrails. What's it mean to be a member of United Way or a journalist or a lawyer, and how are we going to apply those to our guardrails? Chris, I did have a question following up. I love the segmenting of change management, and usually when I studied it in grad school, the laggards are the ones that are maybe they're never going to change, and you kind of always accept a bottom 30% or bottom 10% that aren't going to come along with a major change. Uh, because we're at the beginning of the age of AI and the transformation potential for all of humanity, do you see a different level of responsibility for leaders to bring the laggards along more so than other change management? And if so, how?
Yeah, it's a great question. I appreciate that, Keegan. Yeah, you know what, using that book as kind of a guideline, I kind of read it the same, if I can recall, my time machine, going way back. Yeah, it's the laggards. You kind of are the bottom 10, 20%. You kind of ignore and just kind of push forward. As we go, and as we are seeing utility of AI being applied, what is our responsibility around that cohort? Are they always going to be kind of alienated and put to the side, or do we need to incorporate them some way? This is really near and dear to the heart as a social services nonprofit, because sometimes those laggards are the ones that are in need, and we have to find ways to outreach and connect with them. One of the things that we do at United Way, and in one of the core tenets in our AI design, is the man in the middle. And so we always want to have some sort of man in the middle, to recognize who might be those parties that might not be receiving some of the best benefits out of this solution or tool that we're designing around or creating a workflow around. In some cases, that might be the laggards. So we'll have to figure out some ways to connect with those groups as we design out individual programs and try to find out how do we incorporate them into the program that might be beyond what the model has room to build around. So it's not a precise answer for you, but it is something that's top of mind for us, is how do we include those laggards into the mix.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Keegan, for asking the question, and Eric for filling in the answer for that one. We are at the top of the hour. We're going to go for about 3 more minutes since we started a little bit late. So this has been a great conversation, and clearly, like you said, Eric, it is the Wild West, and this is just the beginning of the conversation. And you also mentioned the idea of creative disruption. So I am going to disrupt our conversation here with a little bit of a creative activity. So Chris and Eric, I sent you an image and asked you a question. And the question is, what do you see in this image that points to one thing a nonprofit leader could change, a nonprofit leader could make tomorrow to future-proof their organization? Again, we will start with Eric to answer this question and then move on to Chris.
Okay, I was hoping you'd start with Chris. You did send this in advance, and I thought, okay, great, now I know what it is. I'm not going to put too much thought into it, and now I put a bunch of thought into it. But I'm looking at it now. So the first thing I see is the image, the orange image of what looks like a sun or a moon going behind a mountain. But so I was looking at that and I was like, what is this? And I realized it's coming out of a typewriter. So I think for me, it says something about output, right? It's visioning your output when you're deciding what your input's going to be, right? So I think somehow that typewriter created that beautiful image, and somebody gave that typewriter some input that created that. So I think think about your input and what you want your output to be.
Great. Thank you for sharing, Eric. Chris, what about you?
Yeah, I like Eric's interpretation. I took it, it's kind of a Rorschach test in some ways. What I took from this picture is it's kind of a warning sign to leaders around AI and the direction forward. You have this kind of dawn kind of image of a sun rising out of the ocean, but like then there's kind of this weird kind of like side thing on the right there that kind of blurs out, and it's coming out of a typewriter. And then you have these 2 directional signs kind of going in different ways, and they're kind of old wooden signs, kind of like not giving you a precise direction. So the warning in this is really, if you don't have like a real good vision of where you want to direct yourselves and have that based in, modernized technologies and, modern approaches, you may get stuck, adapting your vision to old technologies that's going to produce something that might not be the exact vision that you want. You want this great dawn, sun rising out of the ocean, but really the output's going to be something a little less than that. And so I think that this is kind of a warning image of be precise in your vision.
That both of those answers are wonderful. And this is why I love this exercise. So this exercise comes from my work in creative integration. And for those who are joining on, try this when you are facing a challenge or vetting an opportunity with your team. Pull out an image and just ask yourself and ask your team, what characteristics of this image represents how we might solve this challenge, how we might vet this opportunity. So Chris and Eric, thank you so much for agreeing to playing with us today and getting creative here. So that wraps it up for us today. Catch this episode on LinkedIn Live and at peopletalentagency.com. And of course, make sure to share it with a colleague or a friend who might benefit from listening to it. I want to thank you, Eric and Chris, for being part of this conversation, to John for hosting it, and for everyone who joined in today. So connect with us on LinkedIn, and we will see you next time.
Bye. Thank you, Vaughn. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.